First off, I believe going way back to youth, the music world could have lost you to a career in hairdressing at one stage. Is that right?
Yeah, well, I got asked to leave school, you see, so I didn't. I was in the middle of taking exams, so the headmaster said I was a spiffy. He advised me to leave. I don't know if it was so. My mother had a friend that was had a hairdressing business. They were making lots of money, but so I decided to become a ladies' hairdressing apprentice. But I didn't go with this particular guy. I went for a guy who was called. In London, there was a famous hairdresser called John French. Well, this guy was called John French of Egham in Surrey. So he was a car dealer, I think, but his wife would work for John French at one time. But it was good. We had a very upmarket clientele. It was at the bottom of a hill in a very expensive area. So I had a lot of good fun there. But I only stayed there for about 9 months because I was doing gigs. And the late night in the hairdressers was the Friday. They used to finish at 8 o'clock. And I used to get a lot of gigs on a Friday, so I was always leaving early, so it didn't kind of work out. So the last gig that I had a bit of a bust up with my boss because I was doing this gig for the Queen's surgeon having a private party in a big sort of society do, and I had to leave early, and it didn't go down too well with the boss. So I gave up the hairdressing and I went into electronics because the electronics was my hobby. So I left the hairdressers on the Friday and I got another job and I became a electromechanical engineer apprentice starting on the Tuesday. So well, it's pretty good.
You went through a number of bands and band name changes before Mungo Jerry came to be. At any point along the way, were you starting to doubt that your time was ever going to come?
Well, you know, I was doing all this music for fun and writing songs for fun. I wanted to be an electronics kind of entrepreneur. And me and a couple of friends, we decided to build stereos. So we designed this like a high-end kind of stereo system. And I was working in the research lab at Timex at that particular time. You know, Timex, the United States Time Corporation, did the watches, and I was buying all the electronic components and designing printed circuits and all that kind of stuff. So I did all the drawings and designed all the stuff. And other guys, you know, one guy made the cabinets. He was a watchmaker, and another guy did some of the electronics. And we were on our way. And just as we got the first couple of amplifiers done, in the summertime went to #1, so I asked my boss for the afternoon off work to do Top of the Pops, and that was it. I was in the music business.
Do you recall actually sitting down and writing that song?
Yeah, I do actually, because I don't know why I remember it, but I mean, it was just another song that I wrote for the repertoire of the band that I was in. I was playing this kind of a strange kind of a music. It was a mixture of skiffle, jug band music, rural blues, and rockabilly with no drums. And when we played rockabilly, we were said to have the Sun sound. You know, Sun was the studio that Elvis recorded all his early stuff in. Johnny Cash, Jody Lewis, Carl Perkins, they all worked for him. So we got this kind of special sound. And I was running out of material, so I thought I'd try and write this, songs in the vein of the music that I was actually doing. And In the Summertime was one of them. And I came up with a melody one evening, and it just stuck in my head. And the next morning when I went into the laboratory, I had the tune in my head, so I just sat down and wrote all the words. It just came out without even kind of thinking about it. I suppose it must have taken about 10 minutes altogether to write the whole song. But it wasn't written on the basis that I thought it would be a hit or a single. It was just, as I say, repertoire. But this friend of mine, Barry Murray, who I'd known a few years before, he'd got a job as a house producer at Pie Records, and he'd started up a company called the Red Bus Company. And he called me to see what I was doing, and I told him about this new band that I had. And he listened to all the material, and he said, "Oh, that's a hit." He said, "How'd you like to make an album?" So we jumped at the chance, and the company was putting on a festival to launch the company in a bigger way. And it was called the Hollywood Music Festival, which was held in a very small village called Hollywood near Madeley, Newcastle under Lyme, which is in the Potteries in England. They had Grateful Dead, Black Sabbath, Jose Feliciano, Free, Ginger Baker's Air Force, Tony Joe White, Traffic. Loads of big names. At that particular time, the band was called The Good Earth, and it was decided that the record company and the management, or whatever, they decided we should have a new name. They pulled a name out of a hat. It happened to be Mungo Jerry, which comes from the book, Old Possum's Book of Practical Cats by T.S. Eliot. And Mungo Jerry was the collective name for the 4 musicians in the band at that particular time. We did the Hollywood Festival. The record was released on the 22nd of May 1970, which was the Whitsun Bank Holiday weekend, and it was the first maxi single in the world. And we did the first gig as Mungo Jerry the next day, which was the Hollywood Festival. There's about 35,000 people there and a lot of media, and we went down a storm. In fact, we blew all the other bands off stage, so they invited us to play again on the Sunday, which we did. Same thing happened. We got loads of play on the radio, went straight into the charts at number 13. And then on the following Sunday, we did our first TV show, which was on BBC Two. It was at that time called Disco 2, which was the forerunner of the Old Grey Whistle Test. And that was hosted by the late Tommy Vance. And on the bill was The Who, Jimi Hendrix, Richie Havens. And after that, we went straight to number 1. So that was it. And then found myself doing all these festivals all around the world. Everything was running pretty good. And then we came back from a tour of America, and we parted company with our double bass player, Michael Cole. We actually worked with it this particular time. And then we kind of carried on. We had some more hits. We had Baby John went to number 1, Lady Rose, You Don't Have to Be in the Army to Fight in the War. And we went off to do a long tour in the Far East. We did Australia, New Zealand, Japan, Kuala Lumpur, and we stayed in Bangkok. I played in Bangkok, and then we came back from that tour, which was I think it was about February '72, and then I was fired from the band, and I was going to be Ray Dorset, like the singer-songwriter, but the record company again said it was a bad idea, and the other guys that were going to take on the name Manga Jerry had to think of a new name, and I went on as the Mungo Jerry, the artist, performer, and Ray Dorset, the songwriter.
Of course, here in Australia, we had the unusual situation of 2 versions of In the Summertime being hits here at the same time, your original and one by our local band here, The Mixtures. How aware were you at the time of that situation?
Yeah, I heard about the Mixtures version. They also got a gold record for the thing. And then, by the time we went to Australia, they'd had another hit called the Push Bike Song.
That's right.
I think it went to number 2 in England. And then when I was in Melbourne, I got a call from Mick Flynn, who was one of the guys, I think he might have been the leader of the Mixtures. He gave me a call and we had a good chat. And I eventually got to meet Mick a few years later. By that time, he'd departed from the Mixtures, and he had joined the New Seekers. I used to see him quite often. So I don't know what happened. I don't know if the Mixtures ever carried on. But I certainly don't, see their name around anywhere.
No, not collectively, no.
But there's so many bands that have got names now, and with none of the original members, it's a bit strange for them. They might have had a roadie or a driver or something. They go out. You get all these kind of oldie night shows in Europe, and the names there, they do the songs, but the singers are missing. It's strange, really.
Did the success of In the Summertime work against the band in any way? Were people expecting your entire repertoire to be of that style?
Maybe. I don't really know. But the problem was, because there wasn't really a problem. I mean, it opened up lots of avenues because of having such a big hit all around the world. And but the only thing was, a lot of people misunderstood about the kind of music that I was playing, and because it's sort of steeped in the blues, people expected to see a more pop-orientated performance. So some people were kind of disappointed they didn't understand what I actually was doing. But my music is completely no bullshit. It's just I go out quite often still and do shows, no sound check, no rehearsal, no set list. Because there's plenty of people out there who do everything perfectly, but my thing is to do everything from the heart, spontaneously, and and use everybody's intuition. Well, we work in a sort of a jazz kind of a way, really. You know, it's a lot of jazz, and it's, as I say, it's still based on that kind of blues thing and ethnic kind of music. You know.
Mm. Having such a major success first up, was it difficult? Was there a dilemma at all in deciding what song to follow it up with for the next single?
Well, there was a lot of thought that went into it. And then it was Barry Murray that actually picked the song that was the follow-up, which the official follow-up was Baby Jump. Okay, I know a lot of countries, they took tracks off, they couldn't wait, they took tracks off the album. But to me, there was no reason to bring another single out so quickly, because this one was still selling after 9 months, 10 months, it was still going, it was still in charts around the world. So, I did this song called Baby Jump, which was like a rock and roll it was kind of hard rock kind of a thing, but minus drums. And it used to tear the place down. We used to play these festivals, and everyone used to go crazy because of the groove. And that was released in I think it was about March 71, and I was off in Europe. I was at I think it was the San Remo Song Festival in Italy, and was doing some things in France and Italy. We travelled back from there. We got into the UK. One of the guys with us, he was from the office. He phoned the office just to say that we were back in the country, and they said, "Oh, you're number one." And so Baby Jump had gone to number one. I think it knocked My Sweet Lord off of number one, and then I think it got knocked off of number one itself by Paul McCartney another day. And Baby Jump was used in a movie called The Crying Game. I don't know if you've ever heard of that, but it was nominated, and it actually won some Oscars. And the song was used in the opening sequence, the fairground sequence, the full length of the song. So that was great. That's quite an achievement. I was pleased about that.
Looking back now, how do you think you coped with all the overwhelming success and notoriety that was suddenly thrust upon you? Do you think you handled it okay?
Who knows? You can't go back, can you? You can't go back again. But I'll tell you one thing that I did learn, and that is you can't trust the guys that you're working with. And I'm going for a lot of legal battles at the moment, actually, with the ex-management, music publishers and things, because it's subject to a court case. And I'm not the only person involved in this. There's a lot of other people that are well-known, prominent in a prominent position, and I expect you'll be hearing something about it. It's being coordinated by a guy in Australia at the moment, actually.
Oh, really?
His name's Mike Sinclair. He's based over in the Brisbane area. And I'm hoping, actually, I've had a request, actually, the possibility to come over and do some blues festivals. And Bob Daisley, who was actually in the band, we played on All Right, he went on to work with Ozzy Osbourne and Richie Blackmore and Gary Moore. We did this, we did a festival in 73, I think it was, called the Ragnarok Festival, which was like Norway's answer to Woodstock.
Oh, yeah.
And it came out as a DVD this year. All the visuals were found in a package, and it went to number one in Norway. I hope it's probably be released in other parts of the world. And so on the basis of that lineup is we've had an offer to put that lineup together and come over to Australia and do some festivals. So I'm trying to organise it. In fact, Tim Reeves, the drummer, he's actually moved out to I think he's in the Brisbane area as well. Actually, he's moved out to Australia. And Johnny Cook, the keyboard player, he went on to work with Bad Company and Rory Gallagher. And we've all had a talk, and the idea is maybe next year we have a get-together, which would be great fun.
That'd be fantastic. Well, our festival season's in the first quarter of the year, so that's not too far down the track.
Yeah, we've got to kind of get the logistics together. That's the only thing, because we're all committed with other things. If we can do it, it'd be great. It'd be worth putting ourselves out to do that. I'm over in Los Angeles in January to do the annual NAMM Jam, which was I participated in the very first one. And that's where a lot of us sort of do, like musicians do, like networking about future projects and stuff that's coming out. It's always very interesting. The bottom line for me is like the musical instruments and the groove and the music, so it's good to actually communicate with all the people that have got a similar mentality. So it's not a bunch of lawyers and accountants getting together to formularise what they think is going to make the next bit of money for them. It's about the music and the groove and the vibe.
Well, your profile's picked up down here again recently. I'm sure you're aware All Right, All Right, All Right has just been used in a very successful television advertising campaign down here. So people are asking about Mungo Jerry again.
Yeah, that's good. I've seen the movie. I've seen the clip. It's a great ad, isn't it? It's really good. Yeah, well, that song goes on and on. I mean, it was used last year for a whole year in Holland to advertise biscuits.
Was it?
I'm lucky that my songs actually continue to generate a significant amount of income through other uses apart from actually physical CD sales. It's good. I mean, I wrote a song called "Feels Like I'm in Love" for Elvis Presley, which actually became a #1 hit for Kelly Marie, which is like a high energy dance thing that turns up in a lot of movies as well. And then I get obviously All Right, 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 and in the summertime used for no end of projects. So yeah, I'm pleased about all this kind of stuff.
The band went through quite a few lineup changes during the 70s. How unsettling was that for you?
Well, as I said, I got fired from the band, so it didn't make any difference to me. So it was just a question of working with all different people, playing all different kinds of music. I did actually. I was told that was the best thing that happened to me because I don't play just. Although the music that I play is actually blues-based, it doesn't stay in that particular genre. I mean, I've got a specific interest in Southern African music, and I've got my connections over there as well. And the connection between African music and Afro-Caribbean music. And, I mean, it's all kind of, when you think about how that kind of today's pop, I don't know what you want to call it, rock music developed, it was like a big melting pot of people that got together somewhere in the United States. You know, all the people that emigrated over there brought their music together. So you got a mixture of Irish and Scottish and English and European and all this kind of African kind of stuff. So I always go back to the roots. And that's how I came up with a lot of my things, because I was particularly interested in Bob Dylan, and then I found out that he was heavily influenced by Woody Guthrie. So then I got involved in going back from the Woody Guthrie stuff and then getting into Leadbelly stuff and like the rural blues and a lot of very obscure things.
A lot of people, though, when they are trying to classify the music of Mungo Jerry, will refer to the skiffle music movement. How would you be comfortable with that, and how much of that music style was affecting you when you were growing up?
A lot. I saw Lonnie Donegan on TV, and he was such a great performer, and he had such a lot of dynamics. And then his music, he took the songs from Leadbelly and like that kind of stuff, and adapted it to suit. So when he made Rock On and Line, that was done by Leadbelly, and he was a washboard on there. But then Lonnie Donegan had the band that went on as the Lonnie Donegan Skiff Group actually had a drummer, and it was a great band, a great really rhythm section. And recently I've been working with Lonnie Donegan Jr. I've had him as a guest on a couple of shows. I did the Wave Fest with Jethro Tull recently, and I had him guest him with me. And we'll probably actually make an album together sometime in the new year. And I'm helping him with his, with his career and everything as well, because he can't be just a carbon copy of his father. It's like the music's based on the same. It's got the same kind of boundaries, but he's doing his own thing. But obviously, people want to hear him play things like Rock On and Line and Bring a Little Water Sylvie. But he does do other kinds of things.
Yeah.
So the skiffle thing was a big influence on me.
Yeah. How did America take to the band? Was the profile pretty good over there for you?
In the summertime, is probably bigger in America than what it is in the UK or anywhere else for some reason. Although I haven't done a lot of shows over in the States, it's a big place to tour. And I was always so busy, and I didn't really fancy being on the road day in and day out. A lot of friends of mine in other bands, they used to go over there and they tour, 2 or 3 months. You don't get anything for nothing, but then I don't really want to spend all my time sort of being on the road. I like being everywhere, every country, But in the summertime, it's still really, really big in the States.
Now, as the 70s wore on, musical styles changed, and particularly the advent of punk rock. How did that affect you?
it was a strange time. You know, I think people got the wrong end of the stick when they started writing about punk music, because it was okay that they promoted the DIY element of punk, but the violence side of it and the unsocial side of it was also promoted a lot. And a lot of kids came out there and thought that was like part of the music and the entertainment. And it was my worst gig, I'd say. I got an invitation. I had a band called the Insiders, which was basically the Mungo Jerry lineup at that time, which was going Doug Ferguson from Camel on bass, and there was Boris Williams on the drums, who actually ended up with The Cure. And we went out and we did this show as the Insiders as a support to Toyah Wilcox at Leicester University, and we got pelted with rubbish. It was terrible. There was a lot of hatred in the audience. It was crazy. And then I did another show at I think it was Lancaster University as a guest with Blondie, and we actually blew Blondie off the stage. You never believe that, but that was after Denise, and it was before they had like that I don't know what it was, the next big album. And you know, Debbie Harry was up there on stage singing away, and there was all these people spitting at her. It was terrible, and there was all this horrible phlegm hanging from her lovely blonde hair, you know. And last year I was talking to Clem Burke, you know, the drummer, and we were talking about that. We were doing this Mark Bolan memorial concert, and he said, "Oh, do you remember when we played at Lancaster University?" And we was talking about that, you know. But that was out of order at that particular time. Then, so I mean, what came out of punk? When you listen to a lot of the Sex Pistols stuff, it was great. It was really raw, and I like the Stranglers. They're not really punk band, but I love all the Strangler stuff. And there's a lot of good tracks, a lot of good stuff came out of that particular time. And then on the other hand, there's a lot of rubbish came out as well. But the music, the songs and the music and that did come out and that still lasts in that is actually real kind of gems, real classics.
I believe you were the first Western rock band to perform behind the Iron Curtain.
Yeah, we went over there. We played this big concert in Bulgaria, and it was broadcast live to all the complete Soviet bloc. You know, I don't know how many million people that was, 600 million or something, they say. So we opened up the door, so after that they started inviting a few other Western rock bands in to perform. I'd already... after that, I actually got an invitation. I actually did some touring behind the former... I suppose you would call it GDR, which yesterday they were celebrating the fall of the Berlin Wall. And I went over there and I did some things as a test, and then I got invited to do 30 shows in East Germany. So that was an eye-opener. I didn't want to do it all in one go, so 2 lots of 15. Because it's interesting to see how other people live, and you know, and it makes you think about life. You know, you can see people that are sort of oppressed in one way, but on the other hand, they could appreciate a lot of other things that we probably weren't appreciating, and that was the fact that, you know, because they weren't getting all these things that they could obtain in the shops, that so-called to spend their money on, or the little money they did have, that they did a lot of things. They made their own clothes. They spent a lot of time in the country, in the open air, and did all the country pursuits and a lot of sport and stuff like this. But they were, you know, obviously they didn't have the freedom to travel, and they couldn't get. There was a lot of simple things like they queue 3 hours to get a banana, which was a bit sad, really. Yeah. But that was obviously because the West wouldn't trade with them, so it wasn't just really their fault, because they needed the money, they needed Western currency to buy the stuff. But yeah, that's a long story to get into the political arguments.
Now you're dividing your time between Germany and England at the moment. How is that working for you?
Yeah, that's okay, no problem. The thing is, I was doing a lot of stuff in Germany. And I got an office in Germany. And I suppose it was because in England there's this cynical side of the music press, or cynical side of any kind of a press. People do tend to be a lot more cynical about building things up and then knocking it down. Now, in Germany, they just took the music for what it was. They either liked it or they didn't like it. They didn't well, on the side that I was working, they weren't philosophizing about it. So they either liked it or they didn't. So I had the opportunity to do a lot more stuff in Germany than I was doing in England. This was, I would say, towards the mid to late 70s. This kind of thing started to build up, as it did for lots of other UK bands and some American bands for that matter. And I eventually, I got married to a German girl, and she had a beauty salon in the town we were in England. But because I was spending a lot of time in Germany, we decided to buy a property in Germany, and I was spending time there in the house. And then she came over, and then we divided our time between Bournemouth and Bielefeld. Does that kind of make sense to you?
Yeah. Now, looking back over your back catalogue, which for you personally, what record or what song do you think personally has stood the test of time best of all?
Now that's a good one, because obviously in the summertime it stands the test of time, and there's probably only one ultimate version, that is the very first, like the original, and it's totally internationally goes on and on and on. But I did do a lot of stuff that, in retrospect, you listen to it and it doesn't date. I mean, there's a lot of stuff on the album. I did an album called Boot Power, for example, in 72, and there's stuff on there, it still sounds like fresh. But a lot of my stuff, I didn't really follow so many trends, so I suppose if you don't follow a particular trend, you can have a recording released in any sort of decade, and it would sound fresh, I guess. Oh. So other stuff that I'm making now, I think I'm actually performing and playing and singing a lot better than I ever did, because I was pretty much out of control a lot of the time. I used to go a bit over the top. Used to do a lot of shouting and jumping around and going a bit too crazy. But now I've matured a bit more, I suppose, and I've become a bit more in control.
I think you've just stumbled on the key to longevity in the music business there, Ray. Just stay away from trends.
Yeah.
So when it's all said and done, how would you like to see Mungo Jerry remembered?
When you say all is said and done, in what way? Do you mean when I've passed away, do you mean?
When you're in the musician's retirement home, yeah.
Oh, right, okay. Well, I'd like to think that we're remembered as, there's a quote on my website that John Lennon said about what he would be doing, in a few years' time, and he said he'd be playing good, honest skiffle music like Mungo Jerry. So I'd like to be thought of that what I did was to actually do stuff that was not contrived, and then it was completely honest and no bullshit. And that's about it.
Sums it up beautifully. And apart from a possible trip to Australia in the new year, what else is in your books in the near future?
Oh, we're doing a UK theatre tour later on in the year, and we're doing a lot of festivals celebrating 40 years of In the Summertime. And this month I'm actually doing the Jimi Hendrix Birthday Festival in Hungary, and I'm doing the Muddy Waters Blues Festival in the Czech Republic. So I'm doing a lot of things like that around the world.
Fantastic. Terrific. Hey, Ray, thanks for your time. It's been a treat to catch up with you.
Oh, thank you very much for calling. Thanks for taking the toll, and I hope I get over to Oz sometime next year. So one of my sons has just come back from there, actually. He loves the place. He's for the last 2 years, last year he went over there. He went on 2 holidays to Australia, so he keeps raving about it.
Fantastic.
And my wife's got a good school friend that's just over here. Well, she's gone back. She went back on Saturday. So she said she'd never come back to live in Germany. She wants to stay there in Australia. So. Who knows? Well, sounds like a good place to be, really.
Well, hopefully after this trip to Australia you won't get sacked from the band this time.
Okay, thanks a lot then.
Good on you, Ray.
You take care. Yeah, bye-bye.
All the best. Cheers.
Bye.